Harrison sat in the third row of the classroom, his open to the day's lecture notes. Around him, 23 students from a dozen different species filled the curved seats of the amphitheater. The air smelled like copper, and something sweet that had learned came from the students who sat near the back. He had been at Galactic Consortium Academy for 4 months now, and some things still felt strange. Professor stood at the front, her four arms moving in practiced gestures as she explained the finer points of conflict resolution between species. She was, with blue-gray skin and large eyes that could see into the ultraviolet spectrum. Her voice had a musical quality that made even boring subjects sound important. The key to preventing violence, Professor said, is understanding what each species considers a threat. For example, the perceived direct eye contact as an attack. Meanwhile, the require eye contact to establish trust. Typed notes into his, but part of his mind was elsewhere. Something felt off today. He could not quite name it, but his instincts were whispering warnings. It was the same feeling he got back home in Australia when he hiked in the outback and sensed a snake nearby before seeing it. He glanced around the room without moving his head too much. Everything looked normal. Myra, his closest friend at the academy, sat 2 seats over. Her crystalline body reflected the light from the viewport behind them, creating small rainbows on the walls. She caught him looking and gave him what passed for a smile, a brief flash of brighter light from her core. The maintenance drone in the corner was the first thing noticed. It had been there for 20 minutes, longer than normal. These drones usually finished their tasks in 5 minutes or less. This one hovered near the ceiling, its sensors pointed at the classroom instead of the ventilation system it was supposed to be checking. Kept his expression neutral. Maybe he was being paranoid. Earth was and humans had evolved to see threats everywhere. It kept them alive when everything on their planet wanted to kill them, but it made them jumpy around other species who had never faced such dangers. The temperature in the room shifted, just a degree or two cooler, felt it on his skin immediately. Humans were good at detecting temperature changes. It had helped their ancestors survive ice ages and heat waves. But why would the environmental controls adjust during class? "Mr. Harrison," Professor called out, pulling him back to the present. "Perhaps you could share the human perspective on threat response." Stood up, aware that several students shifted in their seats. Humans made some species nervous. They had only joined the galactic community 70 years ago, and their reputation preceded them. Apex predators, a species that had clawed its way to the top of a food chain that would kill most galactic citizens in hours. "Humans have what we call a fight-or-flight response," explained. "When we perceive danger, our bodies flood with adrenaline, our heart rate increases, our muscles tense, blood flow redirects to our limbs, we become stronger and faster for a short time." A student in the front row made a nervous clicking sound. "That sounds terrifying," she said. Shrugged, "It kept us alive. Earth has thousands of species that are bigger, stronger, and more venomous than humans. We needed every advantage we could get." "But you still feel fear?" another student asked. "Of course," said. "Fear is information. It tells us something is wrong. The difference is that humans can think clearly while afraid. We had to, or we would have gone extinct." Professor nodded. "An excellent example of how environment shapes psychology. Please sit down." Returned to his seat. The maintenance drone was gone now. He had not seen it leave. That bothered him more than he wanted to admit. His grandmother had taught him to trust his instincts. She had survived 3 years in the Australian wilderness after her transport crashed when she was young. She had taught that the moment you ignore your gut feeling is the moment you die. The door to the classroom opened. Satention snapped to it immediately, his body tensing before his conscious mind registered why. A figure stepped through, moving with a grace that looked practiced rather than natural. The newcomer wore the standard academy uniform, but something about the way he carried himself was wrong. "Apologies for my tardiness, Professor," the newcomer said. His voice was smooth, almost too smooth. I am transferring into this class. Professor consulted her, her expression confused. I do not have a record of a new student. Administrative error, I am certain, said, moving into the classroom. He was a species had only read about. They came from a world with low gravity and minimal predators. Sleek, almost serpentine, with silver skin and large black eyes. Their hands had 6 fingers, long and dexterous. Watch choose a seat near the exit. Every movement was economical, purposeful. The way eyes scanned the room was not the curious gaze of a new student. It was an assessment. Exits, obstacles, targets. His heart rate increased. His breathing stayed controlled, but his body was preparing for action. He recognized what he was seeing because his grandmother had made him watch recordings of hunters at work. Animal hunters, human hunters, the way they moved, the way they looked at their prey, was a hunter. But could not simply announce that to the class. If he was wrong, he would look paranoid. If he was right and said something, might act immediately. So did what humans did best when facing a predator. He assessed, he planned, he waited. Settled into his seat and pulled out a. To everyone else, he probably looked like a normal student. But noticed the way his hand rested near his side, where a weapon could be concealed under the uniform. He noticed how kept his back to the wall and his eyes on the door. He noticed the slight bulge in his jacket that was not quite right. Professor continued her lecture, apparently deciding to address the administrative confusion later. She discussed historical conflicts and how different species had resolved them without violence. Tried to focus on her words, but his mind was racing through possibilities. If was here to hurt someone, who was the target? There were 24 students in this class, from a dozen different worlds. Any of them could be important enough to warrant an assassin, and if had compromised station security enough to get into the academy with weapons, he likely had an escape plan too. Slowly reached for his, keeping his movements casual. He opened a message to Danny Cooper, his roommate and the only other human currently at the academy. Danny was off station doing field research, but he would get the message eventually. Typed carefully, making it look like a normal conversation. Hey, remember that threat assessment exercise from Survival Training 101? The one about identifying predators in unfamiliar environments. I think I just saw a textbook example in advanced conflict resolution. Room 7 Delta. Might be interesting for your research. He sent the message. Danny would understand. They had both gone through the same training on Earth, the mandatory courses for humans planning to leave there. Recognizing threats, survival tactics, what to do when you are the only apex predator in a room full of prey species. Looked up and found staring directly at him. Their eyes met for just a second and forced himself to smile. It was a human expression that other species found unsettling. Humans smiled when happy, but they also bared their teeth when threatened. It was a holdover from their primate ancestors, a warning and a challenge all at once. His expression did not change, but something shifted in his posture. He had noticed the tension. Now they were both aware of each other, predator and predator, each wondering what the other would do next. Kept smiling and turned his attention back to Professor. His grandmother's voice echoed in his memory. When you spot a predator, don't run, don't panic. Stay calm and make a plan. Because on Earth, the prey that survives is not the fastest. It is the classroom felt colder now, and knew it had nothing to do with the environmental controls. The lecture continued for another 30 minutes, but absorbed almost nothing of what Professor said. His entire focus was split between appearing normal and monitoring. The had settled into his role as a student almost too well, taking notes and occasionally nodding at the lecture. But saw the tells. The way his eyes flickered to the door every 47 seconds. The way his hand kept returning to that spot on his side. The way he sat with his weight forward, ready to move. Had learned threat assessment from his grandmother when he was 12 years old. She had taken him into the Australian outback for 3 weeks with minimal supplies, teaching him how to survive in one of Earth's harshest environments. The lessons had been brutal but necessary. The most dangerous predator is not the biggest or the fastest, she had told him while they watched a dingo pack hunt. It is the one that plans, the one that waits, the one that studies its prey before striking. Thought about that now as he pretended to study his, was planning something. The question was when he would strike and who his target was. The classroom's main display flickered, just for a second barely noticeable, saw it and felt his stomach tighten. Someone was tampering with the station's systems. The maintenance drone, the temperature changes, the display glitch. They were all connected. He glanced at Myra. She was focused on the lecture, her crystalline form reflecting light as she shifted position. Myra had mentioned once that her father was someone important back on her, but she had never given details, had not pushed. Everyone at the academy had their reasons for being here, and privacy was respected. But what if Myra was the target? His mind raced through the possibilities. If was an assassin, he would have researched his target. He would know her schedule, her habits, her vulnerabilities. The classroom was actually a smart place for an attack. Confined space, limited exits, hostages to prevent immediate security response. Professor touched her and frowned. Students, it appears we are experiencing a minor technical issue. The system is initiating a lockdown drill. Please remain in your seats while this resolves. His blood ran cold. There was no drill scheduled today. He had checked the station alerts that morning like he always did. This was making his move. The classroom doors sealed with a soft hiss. Magnetic locks engaged. The viewport behind them dimmed, protective shutters sliding into place. In 30 seconds, they were completely isolated from the rest of the station. Several students shifted nervously. The in the front row made that clicking sound again, louder this time. Professor tried to access her, but the screen was frozen. "This is not a scheduled drill," she announced, her voice calm but concerned. "I am attempting to contact station security." "That will not be necessary," said standing up. The room went silent. Every student turned to look at him, reached into his jacket and pulled out a weapon. It was small, elegant, and unmistakably lethal. A plasma caster, compact enough to be concealed but powerful enough to punch through most personal shielding. "Nobody moves," said quietly. "Nobody speaks unless I ask you a question. If you cooperate, most of you will survive." Chaos erupted. Students screamed. Several tried to run for the sealed doors. A student collapsed, overcome by panic. Professor raised her 4 arms in a calming gesture, but her face had gone pale. Stayed in his seat. His heart was pounding, but his mind was clear. This was the moment his entire evolution had prepared him for. Adrenaline flooded his system, sharpening his senses, quickening his reflexes. But unlike most species, humans could think through the fear. They had to, or they never would have survived their climb to the top of Earth's food chain. Fired once into the ceiling. The plasma bolt burned a perfect hole in the metal, and the smell of scorched material filled the air. The screaming stopped immediately. "Better," said. "Now I will explain the situation. One of you in this room is not who they claim to be. One of you is the child of someone very important, someone whose death would cause significant political complications. I am here to simplify that situation." Watched's eyes scanned the class. The assassin was looking for a reaction, for someone to give themselves away through fear or defiance. Kept his expression neutral, but inside, his mind was working furiously. "I will give you all one chance," continued. "The target can identify themselves now, and the rest of you can leave. Or you can all stay, and I will eliminate every student until I find the right one." Nobody moved. Caught Myra's eye, and what he saw there confirmed his suspicion. She was terrified, but there was something else too, resignation. She knew she was the target. Before Myra could speak, stood up. Every head in the room turned to him, including the assassin's weapon tracked towards chest. "You should sit down," Human said. There was a note of curiosity in his voice, but also warning. Did not sit. He took a step forward, moving slowly, hands visible. "I have a question first." "You are not in a position to ask questions." "Maybe not," said, "but I am curious. You went through a lot of trouble to get in here, compromised station security, hacked the lockdown systems, brought a weapon through multiple checkpoints. That takes skill, planning, time." Tilted his head, studying. "Your point?" "My point is that you are good at what you do," said. "Professional, and professionals make risk assessments. They know when a plan is working and when it is not." "My plan is working perfectly." "Is it?" Took another step forward. He was now in the aisle between the seats, about 10 meters from, "Because I sent a message before you locked us in. My roommate is human. He is also very good at reading coded messages. By now, station security knows something is wrong in this room." It was a bluff, but a calculated one. Danny would not get the message for hours, and even if he did, it would take time for him to alert the right people. But did not know that. All knew was that humans were with survival instincts honed by millions of years of evolution. Weapon did not waver. "You are lying." "Maybe," said. "But are you willing to bet your life on that? Because if I am telling the truth, you have maybe 10 minutes before security overrides your lockdown. And if you are still here when they arrive, you will spend the rest of your life in a detention facility." The other students were watching this exchange with confusion and fear. Professor had gone very still, all four of her arms held carefully away from her body. Myra was staring at with what might have been horror or gratitude or both. "You are very brave for a human," said, "or very stupid." Smiled, that human expression that showed teeth. "My grandmother used to say that bravery and stupidity look the same until you see the outcome. But here is what I know about humans. We are not the biggest or the strongest or the fastest species. We are not even the most of the time." He took another step forward. "But we survived on a planet that tried to kill us every day, predators that could crush our bones, diseases that killed millions, whether that could freeze or burn us to death. We survived because we could outlast anything. We could adapt to anything. We could endure anything." "This is a touching speech," said, "but it will not save you." "I am not trying to save myself," said. "I am trying to make you understand what you are dealing with. You see a young human, unarmed, no match for your weapon. You think I am an obstacle you can remove quickly." His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. His hands were steady, but he could feel the tremor in his muscles, his body preparing for violence. "But I am from Earth. I have been bit by snakes that could kill most species in this room. I have fought off predators with my bare hands. I have survived heat that would cook in minutes. And right now, my body is flooding with chemicals that make me faster, stronger, and more resistant to pain than you can imagine." "You are still flesh," said. "Plasma burns flesh very well." "True," said. "But here is the thing about humans. We heal fast. Our pain tolerance is remarkable. Our shock resistance is even better. You could shoot me and I would not die immediately. I would have seconds, maybe a full minute if you miss vital organs. And in that time I could close the distance between us." He took another step, 8 meters now. "And once I reach you, this becomes a close quarters fight. You are from a low-gravity world. Your bones are lighter than mine. Your muscles are adapted for speed, not strength. In a grappling match, I will break you." His weapon tracked movement. The assassin's expression had changed. The confident predator was becoming uncertain prey. "You would die." "Probably," agreed. "But I would take you with me, and your target would survive. Your mission would fail. All that planning, all that effort, wasted because you did not account for the human variable." The classroom was silent except for the hum of the environmental systems. Could see the calculation in his eyes. Risk versus reward. Success versus survival. The assassin had not planned for resistance. Most species would have cowered. Most species would have given up the target to save themselves. But humans were not most species. "You are bluffing," said finally. "Humans feel fear like everyone else." Smile widened. "You are absolutely right. I am terrified. My heart is racing. My hands want to shake. Every instinct is screaming at me to run." He took another step forward. "But my ancestors learned to hunt while afraid. They learned to fight while injured. They learned to survive while everything else wanted them dead. Fear is information. It tells me you are dangerous, but it does not control me." 6 meters between them now. His finger tightened on the weapon's trigger. "One more step and I will fire." Stopped, he had pushed as far as he could without forcing his hand. Now came the waiting. The part where human endurance met alien patience. The part where evolution mattered more than technology. "You know what the really interesting thing is," said conversationally. "This situation, you, me, a sealed room, a weapon pointed at my chest. This is the most comfortable I have felt since arriving at this academy." Professor made a small sound of distress, but ignored her. His eyes were locked on. "Because this," continued, "is what humans understand. This is what we were made for. Every species has its strength. Yours is precision and planning. Mine is surviving the unsurvivable. So here we are. And now we find out which matters more." Standoff lasted 15 seconds, though it felt like hours too. Every muscle in his body was tense, ready to move. His mind was calculating angles, distances, trajectories. If fired, would have perhaps half a second to react. He would need to move left toward the row of seats, using them as cover. The plasma bolt would still hit him, but maybe not fatally. Maybe. Then lowered his weapon slightly. Not much, just enough to signal a change. "You make good points, human, but you are forgetting something important. I do not need to kill you to complete my mission. I simply need to identify my target." He raised his voice to address the entire class. "Every student will stand and state their full name, and if anyone lies, the human dies first. Then I will start killing students one by one until someone tells me the truth." Felt his jaw tighten, had turned his bluff against him. By making himself the obstacle, had given the assassin leverage. Now every student's life depended on cooperation. "I will start," Professor said quickly, her voice shaking. "My name is I am from Prime. I am exactly who I appear to be." Noted said, "Next." One by one, students stood and identified themselves. A name turned from the outer colonies, a called from the merchant fleets, a who went by the simple name of Green because their actual name was unpronounceable in most languages. Each one was terrified, but each one. Watched Myra. She had not stood yet. She was sitting very still, her crystalline body dim, the rainbow light inside her muted. He could see her making the same calculation he was making. If she revealed herself, she would die. If she stayed silent, would start killing students. It was a choice between certain death and probable death for others. Knew what most people would choose. Survival instinct was strong in every species, but Myra was, and the valued honor above life. She would sacrifice herself rather than let others die for her. Could not allow that. "Myra," he said quietly, "do not." She looked at him and her light pulsed once, an expression of gratitude and sadness. Then she started to stand. Moved fast. He grabbed her from the desk next to him and threw it at in one smooth motion. It was not a great weapon, but humans had evolved as throwing specialists. Their shoulders could rotate in ways other species could not. Their brains could calculate trajectories instantly. 10,000 years ago, humans had killed prey from 30 meters away with thrown spears. At 6 meters was easy. Saw it coming and dodged, but the movement made him shift his aim away from. That was all needed. He lunged forward, using the seats as cover, moving in a zigzag pattern that his grandmother had drilled into him during their wilderness training. Never move in a straight line. Never be where the predator expects. The plasma caster fired. The bolt burned past his left shoulder, close enough that he felt the heat through his uniform. Pain blossomed, but his adrenaline suppressed it. He kept moving. Students screamed and scattered. Professor shouted something but did not hear it over the sound of his own heartbeat. 3 meters, 2 meters, 1. Fired again but had closed the distance. The bolt went wide, hitting the wall behind them, then was on him. They collided hard. Its momentum drove them both backward into the row of seats. The weapon clattered away, sliding across the floor. Did not try to grab it. He did what humans did best in close combat. He made himself a problem that was hard to solve. His weight advantage was significant. Earth's gravity was twice what's had. Bones were denser, his muscles thicker. He used that, pinning down, controlling his center of mass. That was fast, his 6-fingered hands trying to find pressure points, trying to break his grip. But had wrestled with his cousin since childhood, had trained in 3 different martial arts before leaving Earth. He knew how bodies moved and how joints bent and where force applied best. His knee came up hard into his ribs. The impact drove the air from his lungs and stars exploded across his vision. A lucky hit, but had been hit before. His ribs were bruised, maybe cracked, but not broken. He shifted his weight, using his elbow to pin his arm, using his legs to control his hips. "Stop moving," gasped. "You are making this worse." Responded by trying to bite him. His teeth were sharp, designed for cutting, and they sank into his forearm. Blood welled up, hot and wet. The pain was sharp and immediate. His grandmother's voice echoed in his head again. "Pain is just information. Use it." Used his free hand to grab his jaw and force it open. His blood dripped onto the floor, but he did not let go. "Human blood clots fast," he said through gritted teeth. "Another evolutionary advantage. We can keep fighting even when injured." He could feel weakening. These muscles were not designed for sustained exertion. They were built for quick bursts of speed, not endurance. His muscles burned, his ribs screamed, his arm throbbed. But he had run marathons in the Australian heat. He had climbed mountains. He had pushed his body past the point where most species would collapse. "Students, exit the room," Professor shouted. The lockdown had not released, but she was trying to manually override the door controls. Saw Myra move toward them, her crystalline form brightening with what recognized as defensive preparation. Could create barriers from their own bodies, but it required energy and focus. "Stay back," called to her. "He might have backup." It was a guess, but an educated one. Professional assassins rarely worked alone. Someone had to have helped infiltrate the station, compromise security, hide his weapon. That meant someone else might be out there waiting. Made one last desperate attempt to break free. He twisted hard, using his serpentine flexibility to nearly slip his grip. For a moment, they were face to face and saw something in his eyes. Not just fear or anger, but recognition. The recognition of another predator. The understanding that he had miscalculated badly. "You should have researched humans better," said. "We are the species that hunted mammoths to extinction. We are the species that survived ice ages. We are the species that looked at every poison, disease, and predator on Earth and decided to keep existing anyway." He shifted his weight again, using a submission hold his instructor had taught him years ago. It was designed to immobilize without killing. Gasped as his air supply was restricted, not enough to suffocate, but enough to limit his options. "I do not want to kill you," said quietly, "but I will if you force me to, so stop fighting." The classroom door finally opened. Professor had gotten it unsealed. Students poured out into the corridor, their voices overlapping in panic and relief. Only Myra remained, standing guard near end. "Station security has been," Professor called out. "They are on their way." Did not relax his grip. Wounded predators were the most dangerous kind. His shoulder burned where the plasma bolt had grazed him. His ribs throbbed with every breath. His arm was still bleeding from his bite, but he stayed focused. "Why?" asked. "Why risk all this for one target?" His breathing was labored, but he managed to speak. "You would not understand. Your kind has no concept of honor contracts. Try me. The consortium leader authorized sanctions against my people, trade restrictions, travel bans. We are slowly dying because of her policies. His daughter, eyes flicked toward Myra, is payment for that death. Felt Myra's light pulse behind him. She had known. Of course she had known. The weight of being important, of having enemies because of who your parents were. Understood that burden better than most. His own father had been a diplomat, killed in a transport accident that may or may not have been intentional. Revenge does not bring back the dead, said. It just creates more corpses. Easy words from someone who has never watched their people starve. You think Earth was easy? His voice hardened. My species nearly went extinct a dozen times. Plagues, famines, wars. We know about death and starvation. We know about losing everything. But we also know that killing innocents does not fix anything. It just proves you are willing to become the monster you hate. Made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Spoken like someone who has never had to make hard choices. I am making one right now, said. I could kill you. It would be easy at this point. You are exhausted, I am not. One wrong move and I could snap your neck, but I am choosing not to. That is a hard choice. That is what separates thinking beings from animals. The sound of running footsteps echoed in the corridor. Station security had arrived. Heard the distinctive hum of military-grade stunners being powered up. He carefully shifted his position, keeping controlled but making himself visible to the incoming security team. Human in classroom, called out. Suspect restrained. Weapon on floor to my left, do not fire. The security team entered carefully, weapons raised. They were a mix of species, all wearing the black and silver uniforms of consortium security. The lead officer was, his green skin marked with the rank insignia of a commander. Release the suspect, the commander ordered. He has backup somewhere, said. Someone helped him get in here. Someone compromised your systems. The commander's eyes widened slightly. Noted, now release him. Carefully let go of and moved back, his hands raised. His body was screaming at him now that the adrenaline was fatting. His shoulder, his ribs, his arm, everything hurt. Two security officers moved forward with restraints, specialized cuffs that would work on physiology. Myra appeared at side, her light bright with concern. You are injured. I will live, said. That is the nice thing about being from we are hard to kill. Professor approached cautiously, her forearms trembling. Mr. Harrison, that was either the bravest or most foolish thing I have ever witnessed. Managed a weak smile. My grandmother would say both. The medical team arrived next, their equipment scanning injuries. The plasma burn was superficial. The bite wound needed treatment but was not serious. The ribs were bruised but not broken. By the standards of most species, he should have been incapacitated. By human standards, he would be fine in a few days. As the medics worked, watched the security team process, the assassin did not resist. He looked defeated, staring at the floor as they led him away. Felt no satisfaction in the victory, just exhaustion and a bone-deep weariness that had nothing to do with his injuries. Myra stayed close to him. You did not have to do that, she said quietly. You could have let him take me. You would have been safe. Looked at her at the light pulsing in her crystalline form. That is not how humans work, he said. We protect our friends, even when it is stupid, especially when it is stupid. Thank you, she said simply. Nodded, his chimed. A message from Danny had finally come through. Got your message, on my way back. Try not to die before I get there. Allowed himself to smile. Try not to die. That was the human motto. Keep surviving, keep fighting, keep existing despite everything trying to stop you. It was what they did best. The medical bay on Prime Station was designed to accommodate multiple species, which meant the examination table sat on was uncomfortable in new and interesting ways. The medic working on his arm had 6 eyes, and kept using all of them to stare at him with a mixture of professional curiosity and personal horror. "Your cellular regeneration is remarkable," the medic said, applying synthetic skin to the bite wound. "Most species would require surgery for this damage. Your body is already beginning to close the wound on its own." "Humans heal fast," said. He had heard this observation dozens of times since arriving at the academy. Other species found human biology fascinating and slightly disturbing. "We had to. Medical care was not always available on Earth." The medic made a clicking sound. "Your planet sounds truly terrifying." "It has its moments." The burn on his shoulder had been treated with regenerative gel. The ribs were wrapped in a pressure bandage designed to speed healing. His arm now bore a patch of artificial skin that would dissolve as his natural skin grew back underneath. By tomorrow, most of the pain would be gone. By next week, the only evidence would be faint scars. Commander, the security officer, stood nearby with a... He had been asking questions for the past hour while the medics worked. Had answered everything honestly, walking him through the entire incident from the moment he first noticed something was wrong. "Your instincts are impressive," said. "Most species would not have noticed the anomalies you described. The maintenance drone, the temperature shift, the display flicker." "Pattern recognition," explained. "Humans are good at it, we had to be. On Earth, missing patterns meant death. A broken twig could mean a predator nearby. A change in bird calls could mean a storm coming. We evolved to notice small details." Made a note on his. "And yet you did not immediately alert anyone. You waited. Why?" Considered his answer carefully. "Because I was not certain. If I was wrong, I would cause panic for nothing. If I was right and announced it, might have acted immediately. I needed time to assess the situation and form a plan." "That is a calculated risk." "Everything is a calculated risk," said. "The question is whether the calculation is worth the outcome." The door to the medical bay opened. Myra entered, her crystalline form catching the light. Behind her came two more students from the class, the named Turn and a called Green. They approached cautiously, as if might be dangerous. "How are you feeling?" Myra asked. "Like I wrestled an assassin," said with a slight smile. "But I will live." "We wanted to thank you," Turn said. Her voice was soft, almost musical, communicated partially through pheromones, but they had learned to speak standard galactic for other species. "You saved our lives." "I did what anyone would do." "No," Green said firmly. His name was actually a complicated series of colors, but most species just called him Green for simplicity. "Most people would have hidden. Most people would have given up the target to save themselves. You put yourself between us and danger. That is not common behavior." Shifted uncomfortably on the examination table. He did not like being treated as a hero. What he had done felt natural, instinctive. When his friends were threatened, he acted. That was just how humans worked. "I appreciate that," he said. "But really, I just did not think very hard about it." "That is what makes it impressive," Myra said. "You did not hesitate. You saw the threat and moved toward it, not away from it. That is courage." Commander cleared his throat. "Actually, that is psychology. Humans evolved as both predators and prey. When threatened, most prey species flee. Most predator species attack. Humans do both simultaneously. They assess whether they can win the fight or need to escape. Mr. Harrison assessed that he could win." "I assessed that I might survive long enough to make a difference," corrected. "There is a distinction." "Indeed," made another note. "Which brings me to my next question. You mentioned that must have had help. What led you to that conclusion?" Organized his thoughts. This was important. Multiple factors. First, station security is supposed to be excellent. Consortium Academy is a high-value target with students from important families. Getting through security with a weapon requires inside knowledge or outside help. Continue. Second, compromised multiple systems. The lockdown protocols. The door controls, the communication arrays. That requires either exceptional hacking skills or access to security codes. Given that was focused on the assassination, I doubt he had time to hack everything himself. Nodded slowly. We discovered a maintenance worker who was bribed to plant the compromised drone and provide access codes. He has been arrested. Your deduction was correct. There is more, said something while we fought. He mentioned an honor contract. That means he was hired, not acting alone on revenge. Someone paid him to kill Myra, someone who wanted her father's policies changed. Myra's light dimmed. My father has many enemies. The sanctions he imposed are harsh but necessary. Several worlds were profiting from illegal weapons trade. The sanctions were meant to stop that. Illegal weapons trade, repeated. The kind that would make someone desperate enough to hire an assassin. We are investigating that angle, said. There was one of the sanctioned planets. They claimed the sanctions would cause starvation, but evidence suggests the leadership was hoarding resources while blaming the consortium. Thought about's words. His people were dying. Maybe that was true. Maybe it was propaganda. It was hard to know without more information, but it did not matter. Killing Myra would not have saved anyone. It would have just created more violence, more death, more reason for retaliation. What will happen to him? Asked. Will face trial, said. Attempted assassination of a diplomat's family member carries severe penalties. He will spend decades in a rehabilitation facility, possibly longer. He thought he was saving his people, said quietly. That does not justify his actions. No, agreed. It does not, but it explains them. There is a difference. The medic finished with bandages and stepped back. You are cleared to leave. Return in 3 days for a follow-up examination. Avoid strenuous activity until your ribs heal. Slid off the examination table carefully. His body protested, but it was manageable pain. He had experienced worse during wilderness training. Thank you. As they left the medical bay, the group walked together through the station corridors, was aware of how people stared at them. Word of the incident had spread fast. A human had fought an assassin with his bare hands and won. It was the kind of story that would be repeated and exaggerated until it became legend. You are going to be famous, Tern said nervously. Everyone is talking about what happened. I would prefer they did not, said. Fame makes me uncomfortable. Too late, Green said with what might have been a smile. Expressions were hard to read. You are now officially a hero. Students will want to interview you. Professors will want to study you. It is inevitable. Groaned. He had come to the academy to study xenobiology and keep a low profile. So much for that plan. They reached the residential section where student quarters were located. Myra stopped at the entrance to her building. Would you like to come in? I could make tea. Well, my species does not drink tea, but I have researched human preferences. I have acquired caffeine-based beverages. Smiled, that sounds nice. Myra's quarters were larger than, probably due to her family status. The main room was decorated with crystals from her, each one catching light and refracting it in beautiful patterns. There was a workstation with multiple displays, a comfortable seating area designed for multiple species, and a small kitchen unit. Myra prepared drinks while the others settled onto seats. Tern chose a cushioned chair. Green stood, as preferred, took a standard bench that could handle human weight. His ribs were already feeling better. Human metabolism was aggressive about healing damage. I need to apologize, Myra said, bringing over beverages. She handed something that looked like coffee and probably was, based on the smell. You were put in danger because of me, because of who my father is. You did not put me in danger, said. Did. You are not responsible for other people's violence. But if I had not been in that class, then would have found another opportunity, interrupted gently. Assassins do not give up after one failed attempt. At least this way he was caught before he could try again, and nobody died. That is a good outcome. Myra's light pulsed with emotion. Did not cry, but their light fluctuated to express feelings. Right now, she was showing relief mixed with residual fear. You could have died. But I did not, sipped his coffee. It was actually quite good. And now we know the threat. Station security has been improved. The investigation will lead to whoever hired. You are safer now than you were this morning. Because you were willing to fight. Because I am human, said simply. Fighting is what we do, it is in our DNA. We fought predators, we fought disease, we fought each other. We fought the entire planet. And we won mostly. So when faced with one assassin, my instinct was to fight, not flee. Most species would call that insane, Tern said. Most species are probably right, admitted. But insanity is relative. From a human perspective, it is insane to live on a planet where nothing wants to kill you. How do you develop survival skills? How do you learn to be strong? We develop technology, Green said. We build safe environments. We eliminate threats through intelligence, not physical confrontation. Different approaches, said. Not better or worse, just different. Your species evolved in safe environments, so you became specialists in other areas. Humans evolved in a dangerous environment, so we became specialists in survival. Both strategies work. They talked for another hour, discussing the incident from different perspectives. Tern explained how her species would have handled the situation, probably through negotiation, and offering the assassin an alternative contract. Green described protocol, which involved immediate submission to preserve the group while hopping security arrived in time. Myra admitted that honor would have required her to sacrifice herself rather than risk others. All of those approaches make sense for your species, said, but humans think differently. We have a saying, no one left behind. We protect our group even at cost to ourselves. It is why we survived. Individual humans are not that impressive, but humans working together, that is when we become dangerous. His chimed, a message from Danny. Docked, coming to your quarters, prepare for lecture about not dying. Laughed and showed the others. My roommate has returned. I should probably go face his anger about getting injured. They said their goodbyes and made his way to his own quarters. The corridors were quiet now, most students in their rooms after the day's excitement. Station security was more visible than usual, officers posted at key intersections. That would probably continue for a while. Danny was waiting outside their shared quarters when arrived. He was tall for a human, with dark skin and darker eyes that saw everything. Right now, those eyes were assessing injuries with professional precision. You look terrible, Danny said. Thanks, you look well rested. I was off-planet doing boring research while you fought an assassin. Want to tell me why you could not wait 2 days for me to get back? They entered their quarters together. It was a modest space, 2 sleeping areas separated by a common room, a shared bathroom, and a small kitchen. Human-appropriate gravity, human-appropriate temperature. One of the few places on the station where did not have to constantly adjust to alien environments. Filled Danny in on the details while his roommate listened without interrupting. When he finished, Danny was quiet for a long moment. You know, Danny finally said, most humans come to the academy to study and learn about other species. You seem determined to teach them about us instead. It was not intentional. It never is with you. Danny pulled out a medical scanner, running it over injuries despite the fact that he had just been cleared by the station medics. Ribs healing well. Shoulder burn is superficial. Bite wound is closing. You will be fine. I told you that. I needed to see for myself. Danny put away the scanner. You scared me, that message you sent. I knew something was wrong, but I was hours away. I could not help. Understood. Danny had lost someone once back on Earth, a sister who died during a training accident. It had made him protective of his friends, almost obsessively so. I am sorry I worried you. Just try not to fight any more assassins for at least a month. Give me time to recover from this one. Promised, though they both knew that if another situation arose, he would do exactly the same thing. It was not bravery. It was not even choice, really. It was just what humans did. Protect the group, face the danger, survive. 3 days after the incident, returned to Professor's classroom. His ribs were nearly healed, the pain reduced to a dull ache that he could ignore. The bite wound on his arm was already closed, leaving only a faint pink line that would fade in another week. The shoulder burn had vanished entirely, absorbed by his body's aggressive healing process. The classroom looked the same, but it felt different. The scorch mark on the ceiling had been repaired. The seats had been cleaned. Everything was back to normal on the surface, but could see the changes in the students. They watched him differently now, some with respect, some with fear, some with a mixture of both. Professor was already at her podium when entered. She looked up and their eyes met. She gave him a small nod, acknowledgement without making a scene, appreciated that. He took his usual seat in the third row. Myra arrived a moment later, her crystalline form bright in the morning light. She sat next to, which was new. Before the incident, she had kept a polite distance. Now she seemed determined to stay close, as if proximity to the human who had saved her life provided some measure of safety. "How are you feeling?" she asked quietly. "Better every day, you." "I spoke with my father last night. He wants me to return home, but I convinced him to let me stay. The academy increased security. I have personal guards now." She gestured to two figures standing near the entrance, both wearing consortium uniforms. "It is excessive, but it makes him feel better." "Father's worry," said. "Mine was the same way when I first left Earth." Other students filed in. Tern gave a nervous wave. Green nodded in greeting. A few students did not know well stared openly before finding their seats. The assassin incident had made famous, exactly as Green had predicted. He had been interviewed by station security, questioned by academy officials, and examined by 3 different medical teams who wanted to study human trauma response. Everyone wanted to understand how a human had survived a plasma weapon and subdued a trained assassin without proper weapons or armor. The answer was simple. Humans were built to survive. But simple answers did not satisfy researchers who wanted detailed physiological explanations. Professor waited for everyone to settle before beginning. "Good morning. Before we continue with our normal curriculum, I want to address the incident from 3 days ago." The classroom went silent. Every student focused on the professor. What happened in this room was a violation of safety protocols, a breach of security, and a traumatic experience for everyone involved, Professor continued. Her 4 arms moved in synchronized gestures that conveyed both seriousness and compassion. "Counseling services are available for anyone who needs them. You are not expected to simply move past this." She paused, her gaze moving across the students before settling on. "That said, I want to acknowledge Mr. Harrison's actions. What he did was dangerous. It was risky. By most species standards, it was irrational." Felt the attention of the room shift to him. He kept his expression neutral. "But it was also the reason everyone in this class is alive," Professor said. "Mr. Harrison recognized a threat that others missed. He positioned himself as an obstacle when most would have fled. He fought when survival instinct should have told him to surrender. His actions embody both the best and most terrifying aspects of psychology." She turned to the display behind her, activating it with a gesture. Data appeared, charts and graphs that recognized as physiological information. His physiological information, judging by the metrics. "The Academy's medical team has asked permission to use this incident as a teaching opportunity," Professor said. "With Mr. Harrison's consent, we will discuss what happened from a perspective. This will help us understand not just humans, but how different environmental pressures create different survival strategies." Considered objecting but decided against it. If other species were going to share space with humans, They needed to understand what humans were capable of. Better to educate than let fear and misconception spread. "I consent," he said. Professor nodded her thanks. "Let us begin with threat recognition." Mr. Harrison noticed several anomalies before the assassin revealed himself. A maintenance drone lingering too long, temperature fluctuations, display glitches. These details seemed insignificant individually, but together formed a pattern. She highlighted sections of her. Most species would have dismissed these observations as random variation, but humans evolved in an environment where missing patterns meant death. A broken branch could indicate a predator's path. A change in animal behavior could signal an approaching storm. Human brains are wired to detect patterns constantly, even subconsciously. Turn raised a hand. But does that not lead to false positives, seeing threats where none exist? Frequently, Professor agreed. Humans call this anxiety or paranoia, but from an evolutionary standpoint, false positives are better than false negatives. It is safer to assume danger and be wrong than to assume safety and be killed. She pulled up another chart. Now let us examine the confrontation itself. When revealed his weapon, Mr. Harrison's body immediately entered what humans call fight or flight mode. His adrenal glands released hormones that increased his heart rate, redirected blood flow to his muscles, and suppressed his pain response. This is common among many species when facing danger. The difference, she continued, is that most species choose flight. They evolved as prey animals or as predators who could retreat safely. Humans evolved in the middle. Sometimes they were predators, sometimes they were prey. This created a unique psychological profile. They can think rationally while their body is preparing for violence. Green spoke up. Is that why he could talk to, cannot form coherent sentences when facing mortal danger? We either fight or freeze. Precisely. Human evolution required them to communicate while under threat, coordinating during hunts, warning others of danger, negotiating with hostile groups. Their ability to speak clearly while terrified is a survival adaptation. Professor gestured too. Would you like to add anything, Mr. Harrison? Stood slowly, mindful of his still healing ribs. I can try to explain what it felt like if that helps. Please. Organized his thoughts. When I first noticed something was wrong, my conscious mind did not immediately understand why. But some older part of my brain, the part that evolved to keep my ancestors alive, was screaming warnings. I felt it as discomfort, unease, the sense that something was wrong even though I could not identify what. He saw several students leaning forward, fascinated. When revealed himself, everything changed. My fear response triggered, but it did not shut down my thinking. Instead, it enhanced it. Time seemed to slow down. I could process information faster, calculate options, assess risks. It is like my brain divided into two parts. One part was terrified. The other part was coldly analyzing the situation. That sounds horrifying, Turn said quietly. It is, agreed. But it is also useful. When pointed his weapon at me, I was genuinely afraid I would die. But that fear did not paralyze me. It gave me information. It told me he was dangerous, that I needed to act carefully, that hesitation could be fatal. So I used the fear. Let it fuel my awareness while keeping control of my actions. Professor added, this dual processing is rare in galactic species. Most have a unified response to danger, either rational thought or instinctive reaction, but not both simultaneously. Humans can do both because they needed both to survive. She pulled up medical data from treatment. Now let us discuss physical resilience. Mr. Harrison was hit by plasma fire, bit by a species with cutting teeth, and sustained cracked ribs during the fight. By most species standards, any one of these injuries should have been incapacitating. The display showed cellular regeneration rates, pain threshold measurements, and metabolic data. Had seen these numbers before during his post-incident medical evaluations. They looked impressive on screen, but to him, They were just normal human biology. Human pain tolerance is approximately 3 times higher than the galactic average, Professor explained. Their bodies produce natural analgesics during stress. Their healing response is aggressive, with white blood cell counts that would be considered dangerously high in most species. Their bones are dense enough to withstand forces that would shatter or skeletal structures. Are all humans this durable? A student asked from the back. Generally, yes, Professor said. Mr. Harrison is not exceptional by human standards. He is simply a normal human doing what normal humans do, which, by galactic standards, is exceptional. Myra raised a crystalline appendage. What about the psychological aspect? He was willing to die to protect others. Is that also common among humans? Professor looked too. He thought about the question carefully before answering. Humans have strong group bonds, said. We evolved in small tribes where everyone depended on each other. If one person abandoned the group during danger, everyone suffered. So we developed powerful instincts to protect our community, even at personal cost. He glanced at Myra. When I saw threatening you, I did not think about it rationally. I just knew I had to stop him. It was not bravery. It was instinct. The same instinct that makes human parents fight impossible odds to protect their children. The same instinct that makes human soldiers throw themselves on grenades to save their. We are wired to value the group's survival over individual survival. But you could have let Myra sacrifice herself, Tern pointed out. She was willing to reveal herself to save the rest of us. I know, said, but that would have violated everything my evolution taught me. Humans do not abandon their friends. It is one of our defining characteristics. We would rather die together than live knowing we let someone die alone. The classroom was quiet for a moment. Could see students processing this information, trying to understand a psychology so different from their own. Professor broke the silence. This brings us to the larger lesson of this incident. The galaxy contains thousands of species, each shaped by their home environment. Understanding these differences is crucial for peaceful coexistence. She gestured broadly. They evolved on a planet that tried to kill them constantly. This created a species that is physically tough, psychologically resilient, and socially protective. To them, these traits are normal. To most of us, they are extraordinary. But other species have their own extraordinary traits, she continued. Can manipulate energy with their crystalline bodies, can communicate through pheromones across vast distances, can perceive colors we cannot even imagine. Every species brings unique gifts. Returned to his seat, grateful to be out of the spotlight. Professor transitioned into the day's actual lecture, discussing cross-species diplomatic protocols, but could tell the students were still thinking about the incident. They looked at him differently now, not with fear exactly, but with a kind of cautious respect. After class, several students approached with questions. He answered patiently, explaining human biology and psychology as best he could. They wanted to know about Earth, about growing up on about what it felt like to live with such high baseline danger. Is it true that Earth has weather that can kill you? Tern asked. Yes, hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards, droughts. Earth's weather is extreme compared to most inhabited worlds. And the wildlife is genuinely dangerous. Depending on the region, yes. Large predators, venomous animals, parasites. You learn to be careful. How do humans cope with so much danger? Thought about that. We just get used to it. It is all we know. From a human perspective, most galactic worlds seem impossibly safe, like living in a protective bubble. We appreciate that safety, but it also feels strange. We keep waiting for something to go wrong. Danny appeared in the doorway, waiting for. They had planned to get lunch together, excused himself from the group of students and joined his roommate. Still playing ambassador for humanity? Danny asked as they walked toward the dining hall. Someone has to. Otherwise, everyone thinks we are all violent lunatics. We are violent lunatics. We just have good reasons. Laughed. It felt good to laugh, to feel normal again. The dining hall was crowded with students from dozens of species, all eating their biologically appropriate meals. Humans could eat a wider variety of foods than most species, another advantage of evolving as opportunistic omnivores. Chose something that resembled stir-fried vegetables and protein, while Danny selected a sandwich-like creation. They found a table near a viewport overlooking the planet below. Prime was beautiful from orbit, with swirling clouds and vast oceans. It was a diplomatic world, neutral territory, where the Galactic Consortium handled negotiations. The Academy was here specifically to train young beings from different worlds to work together. I heard you are famous now, Danny said between bites. Students are calling you the hero. I hate that title. Get used to it. You gave the entire Academy a demonstration of human capabilities. They will not forget it. Knew Danny was right. His actions had consequences beyond just stopping. He had shown the galaxy what humans could do when pushed. For better or worse, that would shape how people saw his species. Do you think I made things harder for other humans? Asked. Made them seem more dangerous? Danny considered the question. Maybe, but maybe that is not a bad thing. The galaxy needs to understand that humans are not like other species. We come from a world that most of them could not survive on for a day. If they fear us a little, they will also respect us. And respect prevents conflicts. Hoped that was true. The last thing he wanted was to make life harder for the handful of humans scattered across galactic space. There were less than 1,000 humans off Earth, most of them diplomats, traders, or students like himself. They were ambassadors whether they wanted to be or not. His chimed, a message from his grandmother back on Earth. She had heard about the incident through official channels and wanted to make sure he was safe. Smiled and typed a response, assuring her he was fine and that her training had saved his life. Her reply came quickly. Proud of you, but try not to fight any more assassins. They are bad for your health. Showed the message to Danny, who laughed. Your grandmother is the best. She is, agreed. She taught me everything I know about survival. They finished their meal and headed back to their quarters. Had studying to do, assignments that had been postponed due to the incident. But he also had something else to do first. He sent a message to Myra. Are you free this evening? I thought we could study together, safety in numbers and all that. Her response was immediate. Yes, my quarters, I will make tea. Smiled. Life at the academy would continue. Classes would resume. Studies would progress. The incident would fade into memory, becoming just another story students told about the strange human who fought an assassin. But knew that something fundamental had changed. The galaxy had seen what humans could do. They had seen a protect his friends, fight impossible odds, and survive through sheer determination. They had learned that humans were not to be underestimated. And perhaps most importantly, they had learned that humans did not abandon their own. When faced with danger, humans did not calculate the odds and retreat. They calculated the odds and fought anyway, because that was what Earth had taught them. That was what millions of years of evolution had written into their DNA. Survive, protect, endure. It was what they did best, and the galaxy was finally beginning to understand that. Looked out at the stars through the viewport in their quarters. Somewhere out there was Earth, the blue-green world that had forged humanity through fire and ice and 1,000 different dangers. He missed it sometimes, missed the weight of proper gravity, the smell of rain on soil, the sound of wind through trees. But he was here to learn, to understand other species, to build bridges between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. And if that meant occasionally fighting assassins and explaining why humans were the way they were, then so be it. What are you thinking about? Danny asked, noticing his thoughtful expression. Home, said, and how strange it is that the rest of the galaxy thinks Earth is a nightmare. It kind of is. Yeah, agreed, but it is our nightmare and it made us strong. Danny raised his water container in a toast. To Earth, the planet that tried to kill us and failed. Raised his own container. To Earth. They drank, two humans far from home, carrying the legacy of a world that had tested them and found them worthy. And somewhere in the medical files of Prime Station, researchers were studying the data from the encounter, trying to understand the species that smiled at danger and survived the unsurvivable. They would study for years and never fully comprehend it, because understanding humans required understanding Earth. And understanding Earth required accepting that some places in the universe were so dangerous that only the strongest, most adaptable, most determined species could call them home. Humans had earned their place in the galaxy not through superior technology or ancient wisdom, but through simple, relentless refusal to die. And that, more than anything else, was what made them. Not because they sought death, but because they faced it every day and kept on living anyway.